Do not forget about Unfound's website, theunfoundpodcast.com. Robert Torrence McLaughlin, Francis to those who knew him best, was a 35-year-old from Jacksonville, Florida. He had an easygoing nature and was really into music. On the morning of September 25th, 2017, Robert's roommate came home from her overnight job. Robert's car was there, but he was nowhere to be found. He was never seen again. I'm Ed Dunsel, and this is Unfound. We're all experiencing something, or we have experienced something, or we are going to experience something. Problems and issues are unavoidable in life. Powerball winners, Super Bowl champions, men who date Jennifer Aniston, everybody has something going on somewhere inside that none of us realize. And often the complications have nothing to do with drugs, alcohol, or mental illness. It's just stuff. Here are some examples of what I mean from Unfound's own catalog. David Hardy Jr., Alzheimer's. Paul Egan, a creepy, horrible so-called friend. Ellen Sloan, tax issues. Yes, for the most part, people get through these things, but often enough, they do not. And I'm not sure there is a way to predict who will persevere and who will not. Well, with Rob McLaughlin, his issue was physical pain caused by a still hard-to-understand accident. Really, how was he dealing with it? And now a summary of the case. Rob McLaughlin, a.k.a. Francis, had a pretty good time growing up on the Atlantic coast of Florida. He was close with his family. Although Rob had no kids, he was known as a ladies' man. Robert was very much into hip-hop music, but unlike most musicians of that genre today, Rob kept his lyrics hopeful and uplifting. But everything changed for Rob in 2014 when he got hit while walking along the side of Interstate 95 near the Georgia-Florida border. He spent weeks in the hospital with metal plates being inserted in a variety of locations in his body. After this, Rob had constant pain and would occasionally have memory lapses. But Rob seemed to be managing it all pretty well in 2017. So, on September 24th, 2017, Rob was at home with his roommate, a woman from the Netherlands. They were not romantically involved, but had become very close friends, like brother and sister. She left work in the evening for her overnight job, while Rob's plan was to stay home and watch some DVDs. Nothing seemed amiss. The next morning, the roommate came home and went inside thinking Rob was in his room sleeping. However, a call a couple hours later from Rob's mother alerted the roommate that Rob had missed an appointment. Only then did everyone realize Rob was missing. He was never seen again. Eventually, everything but Rob's house key and phone were discovered either in his room or in his car. On Unfound, we've talked a lot about missing people who were addicted to opiate pain medication at the time of their disappearances. But what about those people who resist the urge to use drugs and grind it out with sheer willpower? Contemplate what kind of long-term issues these people might have as you also try to answer these 3 questions during the interview. Number 1, why was Rob's friend TJ so evasive about the accident that happened in 2014? Number 2, why did Rob tweet out that he got a job offer right before he went missing, despite there being no proof this was true? And number 3, why would Rob leave food in his car? Food that was later found once the investigation began. Rob's family isn't sure what to think about his disappearance. The guest for this episode is Rob's roommate at the time, Bella. Unfound news. I'm sad to report that the ex-wife of Steve Pankey died earlier this month at the age of 66. Angela and I eventually came to not see eye to eye on the murder of Janelle Matthews, but I never bore any ill will toward her personally. And yes, you did just see her on the Oxygen Network show. Next, it's the end of the month, so be looking for the next episode of Unfound Now on the YouTube channel. I will do my best to analyze a recent disappearance by looking at the publicly available materials. Finally, I apologize for the problem with the upload of last Friday's episode. There was an issue with the file getting to Apple Podcasts. What was the problem? I don't know. And I will probably never know. I'm just sure it was not my fault. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the roommate of Robert Torrence McLaughlin, Bella. Bella, welcome to Unfound.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and Bella is coming to us from somewhere in Europe, and we're doing this interview over Messenger. This is a rare time that we're doing an interview over Messenger, but I think it's going to work out great. So, Bella, thank you for joining myself and the listeners today. We're doing this interview, by the way, for everybody on September 17th of 2024. Bella, let's just start with you. Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, your background, maybe how you found your way to the United States and Florida. Maybe you could talk about that. And then, of course, later in this discussion, we're also going to talk about how the podcast that you did regarding Robert. But just first, talk a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Bella, and I lived in Jacksonville, Florida from 2006 till 2019. End of the year, this is 2020, you could say. Mm-hmm. And I was there first on vacation, and then I met my then husband. I got married, got me a son, and I established myself in Jacksonville, Florida with him, where he is from. So, and then later on in life, I actually moved back to the Netherlands about 5 years ago.
Okay.
And that's how I got there, and I came there.
Okay. Great. And yes, in fact, we were talking right before we started this that you moved back to Europe just before COVID started. Correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
But then you came back to the United States, and you actually drove around the United States while COVID was going on, and we talked a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Right, okay. All right, and I just have to ask you, what brought you, if I may ask, what brought you to the United States in the first place? You said on vacation, and you met an American guy?
Yeah, well, it wasn't really it was a vacation, but I actually did music too. I did rap music.
Wow.
And my then husband was a producer.
Okay.
So that's how I eventually ended up in Jacksonville to do a song. Yeah. And that's how I met him. And that's how the romance all started.
Wow. How did you like living in Jacksonville? I have to admit, I've only ever driven by Jacksonville. I've never actually stayed there for any amount of time. How did you like it there?
Yeah, I'm from a big city, Rotterdam, in the Netherlands, which
Yeah.
is very cultural and very different.
Yeah.
So Jacksonville was very country to me,
Ha!
but a big city.
Yes.
It's a huge city, but it's full of people who come from the retirement from the Navy
Yeah.
and stuff like
Yes,
that, and
that's
they
true.
kind of stick in Jacksonville.
Yes.
So it's a lot of people from all around who just stick there, and a couple of locals, of course.
Okay. Very good. I have
All
to
right,
ask
then.
what I have to ask while you were living there, did any hurricanes hit in the area while you were living there?
Yeah, but all the hurricanes always kind of skip Jacksonville.
Mm.
So it's it's kind of funny
Okay.
because we have hurricane parties. I don't know if you ever heard of them.
Yeah, yeah, I have. Yes, I have. Yes.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's the day before the hurricane, and you're gonna have a party.
Mm-hmm.
And the hurricane most of the time never hits. I think the worst one was Irma that I remember, and a
Yeah.
couple tropical storms that was really bad. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Did you get to see the rest of Florida while you were here?
Absolutely. I'm a traveler by heart.
Okay.
So I've been, I don't think I skipped any towns in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
My parents used to come over for a couple of weeks, and then we used to travel around America, actually. And every time, once a year, we do a road trip
Okay.
with my parents, and then we would just go and explore Florida.
Yeah. Okay. So, did you ever? Of course, of course, the listeners know I live here in Clearwater Beach. You've been here then?
Absolutely. A couple of
Okay.
times. I love it.
Okay. Well, yeah, I love it too. Yes. Excellent pointing that out. Okay. So it very well may be that one of your trips we came close to each other, but we didn't know each other at the time. You're in the area, I'm here, and we might have been like two ships passing in the night or something.
I know, right?
Yeah, very possible. Okay, very good. Thank you for sharing that. All right, so you came over and you were in the music business, and I guess that's how you met Rob. So let's talk a little bit about that. How did you meet him? Do you remember the first time you met Rob? What can you say about that?
Yeah, I was actually on a jury for a panel. I'm sorry, I should say panel. A panel for a small prize. I think it was 50 or 100 bucks, and people had to go to the talent show. And I saw Rob perform. That was the first time that I actually saw him. And I saw him perform, and I was just blown away by his performance and his music. So we kind of instantly actually connected on that level. We just started talking, and he said, "Hey, tomorrow I go to the club. You want to come along?" I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And then we got in the club, and he introduced me to everybody as their manager from Europe. I was like, oh, okay.
Okay,
And
Rob.
that's how he got the attention of other people. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And then we just clicked. It clicked actually like almost automatically, and then on a very platonic way, actually, because I was still married, and that's how my friendship was with him.
Okay. What year do you think this was about?
2009.
2009. All right. So about 8 years before he goes missing. That's how you met him. And we're just
Yeah.
making clear, it was just like a platonic thing. You just clicked personality wise, business wise. You both had interest in music. This was not something romantic or anything. You were still married at the time.
I was still married at the time, and no, absolutely not.
Okay. All right.
Rob always saw me as his sister. He called me his sister too.
Okay. Interesting. So what were some of the qualities? Of course, you got to know him better. Of course, you two ended up becoming roommates. We'll get to that in a moment. What were some of the things that, when you think about Rob, that come to mind, his personality, some of the most outstanding qualities of Rob?
Rob was very chill. So he always had a clear mind, and he was very nice to the people. So he would always help people. That was one thing that I absolutely like about him. And he always was good on advice, for example. He was a good listener. He was absolutely had great humor. and his loyalty to people. Once you are getting into that circle of him, the close circle, his loyalty was absolutely one of his best traits. He would do anything for you to help you. And he was just overall not too much drinking, no drugs. He loved kids. He had all these great characteristics that I think that draw me to him, actually.
Okay. What about his music? You said I guess he really impressed you with his music. Hip hop, rap music. What kind of style? What was the genre? What did he like to rap and talk about and sing about in his music?
He is comparable. He had the kind of the southern flow like Andre 3000 from Outkast.
Okay, yes.
I think I would compare him to that. And then he had a very soulful. He was very soulful. So he didn't just I don't think he ever talked about drugs or whatever, but he talked about the good times, or think about what you got to do next, or how to get there, or, or about girls. It was always nothing negative and nothing aggressive or anything like that.
Okay. Nothing violent, no violent imagery or anything left, nothing like that. No Public Enemy, no NWA.
No, he would walk away from that before. He would never get into a fight unless somebody started to fight and he had to jump in, and he was a lawyer friend. He would jump in, but he would probably walk away before he would anything. Be like, nah, I don't got no energy for that. Bye.
Okay, all right. Did you get to meet some of his family? Did some of his family, his mother, brothers, sisters, or whoever, live in the Jacksonville area? Did you get to meet some of them over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I met his mother, his grandmother. Those are the two most important women in his life that I met, and always kept in contact with me also. And then you got his cousin that I know of that was always, if we go hang out, he would come along. And a couple of other of his family members. Yeah. I met him over the years.
All right, right. And of course, we have to remember you knew him from 2009 until he went missing in 2017, 8 years. A long time, so it does make sense that you would maybe run into those people and he would introduce you to some of them over the years, especially if they live in the area. This musical pursuit, was he looking to make it big, or was this just a hobby for him? How would you explain it?
I would explain that he would definitely try to make it big. And in that quest to make him big, he also was very hurt that his music wasn't heard the way he wanted to be heard. So yeah, his drive was always, he can make it. He was lyrically so good and musically just very, very strong. He was creative, and he had the voice for it. He had basically the whole package. He just like 1,000 or million other rappers, just didn't have the chance to break through.
You need some luck, right?
That was his whole life.
Right, you need some luck. You need a break here and there, right? Because everybody's trying to do
absolutely.
that. Yeah, right. Okay. Let's move on to this. How did you two become roommates, and what kind of roommate was he? How did that all come together?
So there's two things that we actually became roommates to.
Okay.
The first time when I actually divorced my then husband, so I divorced with him, and then I needed to go and find myself a place to stay. And this is where another best friend of his come into place, which is Amp. And Francis says, hey, you know what? Amp is looking too. How about you guys get a house together? So we made the deal and said, okay, cool, let's do that. Well, eventually, more than 9 out of 10 times, Francis was overstaying there. Amp was there, and another good friend of us, Phil, was there. So we kind of spent almost a year long with the three of us, four of us in a house, and he would have the key, and he would just stop in by. This was before I actually moved out to my own place, and I gave Rob. Sorry, I keep calling him Francis.
All right,
Rob.
well, I'll just clarify right now. Yes, so some people did call him Francis. I'm calling him Rob just to make sure, because that was his official, at least first name. But yes, the listeners should know Francis was like something also that people called him. So if you go between both, I think people will understand. Please continue, Bella. That's okay.
Okay, so yeah, was like I was living there, and then he suddenly called me up, and he would already crash on the couch, but he would at least let me know. And one day he said, "Hey, I broke up with his girlfriend, or something happened," and he asked me if he could stay in my son's room. And because I was working overnight and my son was with his father, I said, "Yeah, of course, no problem. You can always stay here." And so that's how we actually became roommates.
And what year do you think this was approximately?
This was 2017.
So you two were roommates not too long before he went missing.
That is correct.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
About May, I think it was. Actually, beginning of May.
Okay. All right. We have to remember that he went missing in September, so just 4 or 5 months later. Okay. Very good. Thank you for putting that in the timeline. What kind of roommate was he, and what was he doing? Of course, like you said, he's trying to become a musician, but I'm guessing maybe he had some sort of day job, so maybe we can talk about that now. What kind of roommate was he? What was he doing for money during the year of 2017?
For the money, he was doing, I believe he was like in a storage unit. Like he was doing boxes and stuff like that, carrying boxes. That was his last job before he went missing.
Okay.
Before that, he was working in a store, and the store was for women clothing.
Oh, okay. All right.
It really fit him.
All right. Okay, so should I ask, was he a little bit of of course he got along with you, but you two just friends? Was he a little bit of a ladies' man? What can you say about that part of his life? The
1,000%.
Wow, all right.
1,000%. Yes, absolutely. He was a ladies' man. Once he was with a girl, he was with the girl. So that's the same thing as with his friends. Once he fully trusted you and he fully put you into the circle, that's when he was completely committed to you. But other than that, yeah, he was absolutely a ladies' man.
Okay, very good. All right. And what kind of roommate was he? Was he neat? What kind of how were the living arrangements during those months?
It was actually very simple because I was working and sleeping at night and sleeping during the day most of the time. So it was very easy. And he was very neat. He was very neat, very hygienic, always ironing his clothes and stuff like that. Even around the house, he would always clean up behind himself. He was really the perfect roommate. And
okay.
If he would cook, and then he would cook something extra, and even if he didn't have the money, he would actually, when he wasn't working anymore, then he would still find himself some food, and he would always save me something, or he would cook something up and put candy in the cabinet just for my son. So yeah, he would do all kinds of things.
Okay, and so your son was living there as well. So it was the three of you.
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe you can say, how did your son and Rob get along? They like play video games together, or what?
My son is actually has autism, so he's a little bit different.
Okay.
But he absolutely adored Uncle Francis. That's what we called him.
Okay.
Till this day, he still talks about him.
Wow.
And Francis would take him like to the store, because then all the women would be like, "Oh, he's so cute," and they learned him.
Oh,
They
I
learned him
see.
to say like, "Oh, you're so beautiful." So, and then he would often, most of the time, he would talk to the ladies with my son
Oh, I
next to
see.
him.
I see Rob working there. Okay. I gotcha. All right. So he goes out with your son, and then that it kind of attracts women to Rob. Or okay. All right.
Yeah.
I see. Guys do that. I've not been a guy like that to do that, but I've heard that works. Um, Interesting. Okay. And what about actually women? Let's just maybe stick to 2017. Did he have a girlfriend, like a steady girlfriend, 2016, 2017, or was he playing the field around this time? What can you say?
No, he did had a woman that he really absolutely liked, and she was around for like 2 years, and the last year he actually started to really get with her. So he decided before he came living with me to live with her, and then something went wrong, and that's how he came back to me.
Okay.
He started to rekindle that relationship with her again right before the accident. So they was already back to rekindling, and I talked a lot about it with him.
Okay.
So in my opinion, that was his girlfriend.
Okay. And would you say that they were a couple at the time of his disappearance or not?
I think so.
They were. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And we don't have to get into
He
her
was still
name.
living with me, but he was trying to move forward in that relationship with her.
Okay. And would you say it was a pretty good relationship? Once again, we're not getting into names. Would you say that given that you knew him for those 8 years, did you like her? Did you think the two were a good match?
Yeah, I liked her.
Yeah.
And yes, I do think that they were a good match.
Okay.
I just think that Francis is very up on himself and he's a hard time trusting people. And
Yeah.
I think that she betrayed his trust at one point.
Oh.
But he loved her, but he needs to get over that little point of like, okay, I'm gonna give her a second chance.
Yeah.
That's what they were in their stadium of their relationship.
Okay.
He was trying to give her a second chance.
Okay. All right. So we've gotten to talk about how you two met, you two living together, how you came to be roommates. Of course, your son is there as well. You're living there in the Jacksonville area. It seems to me like you had alternating schedules where he's working during the day, you're working at night. So, you're like two ships passing in the night kind of thing. And, but you're still making great roommates, seem to be very, very good friends, and he has his own romantic pursuits, and everything, I guess, was going fairly well. So let's now get into some issues, and we're going to start here. You did say about this accident, and it started with, I think, this trip allegedly to Georgia. What can you say about it? But first, who is TJ?
TJ is one of the friends that we had. So it was always Francis was the connector. Let me say it like that. And then you had me, and then you had Amp, Phil, and there was TJ. And
Okay.
TJ was literally Francis' best friend since they would grow up from church.
Wow.
They grew up together.
Okay.
And TJ was one of those friends that I actually didn't really interact in these 8 years. I knew of him, but I knew that he had a family, he had kids and all that stuff, and he was working 2 jobs. Very, very straight, narrow guy.
Okay.
That's how I always seen him. And then, so now and then, he would pop up somewhere, but it would be always short, and he would always have to go. So this is how I see TJ, as a guy who comes and goes, and is not really his best friend in that note.
Okay.
I don't.
Was TJ into music like Rob/Francis was?
No,
No.
absolutely not.
Okay.
No,
All right.
no. It was his. It was almost sometimes like he put TJ to the side, like that's mine. That's my safety. My to-go guy.
Okay. All right. So that is TJ. So let's move on to this. Let's talk about this Georgia trip where eventually Robs gets hit by a truck. What can you say about this? I understand there was like a recording or something left on your phone first, and then the wreck happened. What can you say about this entire Georgia trip, including the wreck and the aftermath?
Okay, so it started with him calling. Well, it started actually with on a Friday we had a party and I couldn't come. Phil Amp had a party and I couldn't go. So we met up on Friday, went to do grocery shopping together, and then I dropped him off. He had a big party, and then the next day they had another party with some other girls, and Phil got locked up. Okay? And we had to go and get him the next day on Sunday, I think it was.
Okay.
So we picked up Phil. I had to go back to work. And then on Sunday night, that's when everything kind of started happening, and he's left me that voicemail while I was at work.
Okay, and by the way, just what month and year is this, just to make sure we understand this wreck? What year was it?
I believe this was in February 2014.
Okay, so like 3.5 years before he goes missing, this is when this is all happening. Okay, and what is, if you can remember, maybe not specifically, what was the topic of this message that he left?
The voicemail was just, "Hey, Bells, just checking up, see if he was at work."
Okay.
And the next one was something similar, like, "Hey, I just want to see if he was at work, if you could come pick me up."
Okay. Didn't say anything about
that's
going.
That's really what it was.
Didn't say like anything about going to the state of Georgia. Of course, Georgia's very close to Jacksonville. Nothing like that.
Nothing. We had no clue.
Okay.
And then on Tuesday is when I got the call from his mother saying, "Hey, Francis is in the hospital. He's on breathing. He had a very serious accident." Wow. And that's when kind of the ball started rolling, like, okay, what just happened?
Yeah. Right.
Then I went to the hospital, and of course, his mother is completely frantic because she don't understand why was he walking from Jacksonville, and he was hit between the first exit in Georgia and the second exit in Georgia. The first is St. Mary, I think it is.
Okay.
And then the second one. He was hit on 95 on the side of the road.
Oh my goodness.
From the left side, on the back of his left side.
Yeah.
So that's actually all the information that we had. And then we found out that the truck driver probably fell asleep, went onto the shoulder, and that's where he was walking. Okay. I know, crazy.
Yeah.
And so he was hit from behind. They left him without shoes, and they took his backpack. Just to show that he was like a homeless guy or trying to commit suicide. At the time, we knew that he didn't commit suicide because he was hit from behind on the left side. So there's no way if you're going to commit suicide, you're going to walk towards the truck.
Right.
And we know from eyewitnesses that that's not what happened. And the tire in the grass show also a whole nother story.
So are you saying that this person in this truck hit him, and then it was a hit and run, and they eventually tracked this guy down, or what?
No, he stopped.
He stopped. Okay.
He took his shoes. He took
Wow.
his shoes and his backpack, and said, "Look, this is a homeless guy. He was trying to commit suicide."
Oh my gosh.
And then the cops, because Francis was unable to tell what happened because he lost his memory.
Yeah.
He had a very big brain damage, so he couldn't remember anything from that point on. His short-term memory was very hard. Let me say it like that, very difficult.
Okay.
So he couldn't remember the whole story. But then our question was, what was you doing there?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
what was you doing there? Like, we had zero idea of you even leaving like that. Like, what's going on?
Yes.
So we got to the hospital a couple of days later, and TJ popped up. And it was me, Phil, TJ, Mom, and, Miss Angela, his mom, and the grandma. And we were all five in the room with Francis. And I said, "Okay, TJ, what's the last time you seen Francis?" And he said, "Well, does it matter?" I said, "Well, why don't you just answer the question?" Mm-hmm. All of us could tell from Friday till the last moment we saw Francis, but you. What does it matter? Your boy is on a breathing machine. Why don't you tell us what's the last time you saw him? And so he kind of got irritated with me, and I got more irritated with him. I said, "Listen, just give the mother the answer. But I promised, Bells, I promised Francis not to tell." I said, "I don't care. This is not the time to hold the information. He is here. He could have been dead."
Yep.
And then he said, "Well, I spoke to him on Sunday." I said, "Sunday?" I said, "Okay, so you're the last person who talked to him." And I was like, "Where?" "Well, I saw him at the library." I was like, "Okay." And then I started asking him, like, "Okay, so you saw him at the library. What happened then? What was you doing in the library?" That's very coincidence. That's not a place where you would go to. Mm-hmm. That's a place where Francis would go to. Francis would love the library, so he would be there all the time. But not you. And then he said, well, he asked me to come and pick him up and bring him to Pecan Park, which is the exit. Back then, that was deserted more.
Okay.
There was not even, I don't even believe there was a gas station there. And it's the exit before the first exit, St. Mary. Mm-hmm. So the last exit of Florida.
Yep.
And I said, "So you just dropped him off there without asking questions?" And he said, "I don't ask questions. If you ask me to do that, then I do that." And this really stuck with me.
Of course.
Because that told me that his loyalty to Francis and not telling is so big that he could have, he dodged the question, who brought him there and what happened, and he never answered the question what he was doing there exactly. Why did he bring him there?
So just to make sure everybody understands this, Rob/Francis asks TJ to drive him to this particular spot near the Florida-Georgia border. TJ just does as he does, I guess, as ordered, not asking any questions. Seemingly, Rob/Francis gets out there, starts, I guess, walking on the highway, and eventually this truck hits Rob, and that's how he ended up in the hospital. And TJ has his mouth shut regarding the whole thing.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that always stick to me because not necessarily of TJ, but more of the fact, necessarily about TJ, but more of the fact how loyal he is.
Yeah.
To not tell one tiny little information bit that would give rest to Miss Angela, to his mother, that her son wasn't taken, that we knew have a little bit of information about where he was trying to go. Of course, later on, I actually went to a gas station between, because he made it to the first gas station, which is St. Mary. So he walked that first piece. That's, he asked the lady there if he could call his sister. And she said he left her 2 voicemails. So I know that with the sister, he meant actually me, because that's who he left the voicemails for. Later on, we understood that he's supposed to have been picked up by somebody to bring him to Atlanta for some music.
And did you ever get this person's name?
No.
Huh. All
because
right.
Francis couldn't remember anything.
All right.
And his phone was gone.
All right, so he gets hit and his phone was gone. His phone was never found.
Never found.
Wow.
Neither his backpack with all his music in it.
Huh.
Which was absolutely crazy.
I
Yeah.
agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. And so what we're also saying is TJ, even for the next 3.5 years until the disappearance, TJ never offered up any more of the story than that he just dropped him off and that was that.
Yeah, that was that.
Okay.
And I don't know how their relationship exactly was.
Mm-hmm.
Like, with me, I would say, okay, where do you want me to come pick you up? Where you was? You know, I would ask questions.
Yeah.
And I don't know if TJ if that's a code that they had between them, don't ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
That could be something that I never had with Francis or never understood, because I'm a female and I'm always worried, so I would ask him. But Francis, you gotta understand that Francis would ask me to come pick him up, and he would ask me to come pick him up a couple streets over from where he was actually at. Does it make any sense?
I don't know if it does or not. I'm not sure. I didn't know Rob/Francis. You do. I would tell you if a friend of mine was doing that, I would think that's pretty shady. But like I said, I don't know the man. So.
Well, that's to give you an example. That's how he was. Even if I had to pick him up at his mom, he would never give me his mom's address. For example, he would say, "Hey, can you pick me up at this apartment complex?"
Yeah. Okay.
For an example, that's what he would do. Or can you drop me off there? He would never share too much information.
Okay. How long was he in the hospital after this wreck?
Oh, I think a good 2 to 3 weeks.
Wow.
Because you gotta he didn't remember anything. He remembered me. He remembered his music, though. That was really cool. Because I spent many nights, evenings, or before work, whatever, I spent it in the hospital with him. And I would just like play his music, and he would be able to rap along almost. But he would constantly ask me, "What did I do? Explain, what did I do? What did I do yesterday?" In the beginning, he thought he was in New York somewhere in 1986.
Wow. Wow.
Crazy. Yeah, he was completely off. Like, it really hit his brain. He didn't remember anything prior to the accident or bits and pieces of it, but not to tell a story. Not to recall a memory. He would not unable to do that.
Okay. Going over those next 3.5 years, would his memory get any better of the wreck, the accident, and how was his memory regarding in the next 3.5 years, just in general?
In general, Francis knew how to keep it acting like everything was okay. Because he didn't want his mom to worry about him, me to worry about him, anybody really to worry about him. He didn't want that. So if we would all come together and we would talk about something that we went on trips to LA over to Atlanta for a music festival, and we'd be like, "Oh, do you remember what you did there?" And then he would lock that up and use it the next time, or he would just laugh along as long as he acted like he knew what we were talking about, even when he couldn't recall anything. So yes, in that perspective, so his long-term memory he had trouble with, and his short-term memory actually also. But it faded kind of away till he fell. That's about 2 or 3 weeks before the accident happened.
Okay.
He hit his head again.
When you say before the accident, do you mean before his disappearance or what?
Oh, I'm sorry, before his disappearance.
Before his, all right, so he fell like 2 or 3 weeks before his disappearance in 2017.
Yes.
You know, what happened there?
He was with his girlfriend. He was clowning around, and he hit something. He fell, and he chipped his tooth, his front tooth.
Ouch.
Yes, and that is actually, I think, a little bit more of the story. It becomes more of the story that I thought of in the beginning. Because he chipped his tooth. I'm sorry.
Yeah, please continue. So he chipped his tooth, but you think that he might have hit, of course, you can chip your tooth and not have any brain injuries or anything, but you think maybe he hit his head as well?
Yes. And the reason is because his mom told me later that the brain damage that he had before, every time when you hit your head, it could come back.
Yeah, right.
So maybe in his head it was all scrambled again. But of course, for 3 years he'd been trying not to be to have, you know, to have anybody worried about it.
Yeah.
So he's trying to cover it and cover it and cover it, what's going on in his head. And, you know, I don't know if that definitely had something to do with it.
Yeah, we don't want to get too much into speculation, but what you're saying is your belief is that, all right, he has this wreck, obviously has some brain trauma because of it, memory issues and everything, and then just a few weeks before he goes missing, seemingly he has another accident in which he hits his head again, and kind of some of these things start all over again.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That's
we just
really
have to remember. Yeah, we just don't want to speculate too much. But okay. So he has this much smaller accident not long before he goes missing. I want to move on to this now. Because of his accident, he was taking pain medication. And how bad could the pain get? Did Rob/Francis talk to you about his pain?
Oh yeah, all the time. That's why he stopped the job at the storage unit. Because he had to move so much, and his shoulders, he had iron plates in his shoulders and his arms.
Wow.
And they start hurting again really bad. He was able to play basketball a little bit, and then he started doing it again, and it just started hurting more and more each day. He did not have pain pills for it, because they want you to learn how to deal with the pain.
Yeah.
Sadly enough, yeah. So that was one of the things that he was looking for, to get rid of the pain, to have pain pills.
And yes, and of course we know a lot of pain pills can be very, very addictive. Do you think he might have developed an addiction to pain medication over this 3.5 years, or what?
No, because he didn't get them.
He didn't get. All right. Okay. Good point.
I'm laughing because he didn't get them.
Okay.
And there's one thing that he didn't like, and that was addiction. So he would not do, like, you know how some people say, like, oh, if you have pain, take some weed, some marijuana for the pain.
Yeah.
He was not He was not doing any type of drugs at that time.
Okay. All right, but the pain mainly from his upper torso, I guess, or all over, or what would he talk about when he would tell you about how he was suffering?
His shoulder.
Shoulder.
His shoulder and his arm, yeah. The iron plates were really, really painful for him. It might have hit a nerve or something like that.
Okay. Would you say, in your opinion, being that you knew him since 2009, after the wreck in 2014, would you say, we of course know that physically and everything, he changed. Would you say, though, that he was kind of a changed man as well? Maybe did he have the same outlook in life? How was his attitude toward life and friends and everything after this wreck? Did it get back to where it was, or what would you say?
In my opinion, he was never the same. Mm-hmm. And I think that he beat himself up for not remembering everything that we had, the humor, and he had to deal with pain on a daily basis. So he would work like more on his music actually than anything else. He really trying to get that off the ground.
Right. And of course, I'm guessing you were helping him with that.
As much as I could, yeah.
Yeah. And how would you say that was going? Music, something you can fall back on, I guess, when you have injuries and if you have a hard time playing basketball, but the music's there, you can sit there at the computer or keyboard or drum machine or whatever else.
That's exactly what he did.
And how was that going, in your opinion? Given that you were into music too, how was that going for him?
Oh, absolutely great, because he just brought out he unreleased a couple of days before his missing, he unreleased a couple of songs that I know that he was busy with, and an album called Heart Treatment. Mm-hmm. Heart Treatment. Okay. And then I knew that he was already working on 2 other albums that he already wrote out and was going to record.
Wow. All right, so the creative juices were still flowing.
Absolutely,
okay.
Yeah.
Did he, given that he was having some memory issues, was writing or anything, a problem, creating music, a problem for him at all?
Not at all.
Not at all. Okay.
He picked that up so quick.
Okay.
Like even the lyrics that he had, like he would know my lyrics better than he know his, and even though they were written before the accident, so his memory on lyric writing was impeccable when making music.
Okay. Now you did tell me, and maybe we can combine this going back to the chipped tooth again, is that it seems to me these things happen maybe within a week or 2 of each other, that he quit his job just a few weeks before he went missing. Maybe you want to combine that with what you were also going to say a little bit more about the chipped tooth, this other accident that they had. What can you say about that whole time frame, about a month before he went missing?
So yeah, he chipped his tooth, and as I said, he was in some way very vain, and he liked smiling, and he liked his teeth to be perfect, his face, his head, that type of stuff. So he was always worried about how people would perceive him. And so he had his tooth chipped, and I told him, I said, why don't you go to the dentist and see how much it is, how much they would fix it for.
Yeah.
And so he came back and he said, is 300, the bill was 300. I said, okay.
Not too bad.
Huh?
That's not too bad.
No, it's not too bad at all. It's 300. But at that moment, I didn't have it. He didn't have it. He started asking, but he didn't really want to ask anybody. Yeah. That's how he was too. He would not have anybody handing him out the money. So I know he asked his mom, and I think his mom didn't have it, or because I remember a conversation, and then he said, where can I get he was so worried about him not being able to smile, that he even asked his dad, and the dad relationship wasn't that good, that great. But they were going on And when he was younger, it wasn't great. But at this time, they was start bonding again over football, and I said, why don't you ask your dad? You can ask him, Um, and I know that his dad didn't have it either. I know that I seen the text messages between them, and I know that he was very disappointed about that. Um, but yeah, so he was kind of looking for that money. And I always think that has something to do also with his disappearing.
Okay. All right. And before he went missing, so when he went missing, he actually had this chipped front tooth.
Yes.
So it
It
never
wasn't
did
even
get
that
fixed
bad.
one way or the other before.
No.
Okay.
But
All right.
that's one thing that I thought about later on. I was like, he was looking for kind of for a quick money to get his tooth fixed.
Yeah. Right, and he's a performer. I mean, nobody would want a front tooth chipped for any reason, an accountant or anybody else. But being that he was a performer and he would get up in front of people, I mean, that's something that matters.
Yeah,
Appearances
it really
matter,
did for him.
especially in entertainment. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And his mom said that there was a show that he got planned on in Savannah. A couple weeks later. So I think that was absolutely what you're saying.
Big
Correct.
on his mind. Yeah, he wanted to show up there and have his tooth fixed, so his teeth could look good.
Yeah.
Okay, makes all the sense in the world. Absolutely, we do know that performers, both professional and amateur, and somewhere in between, they care about their appearance and want to look good and everything else. So this makes all the sense in the world. Nothing unusual about it at all. But he did quit. You did tell me though that he quit his job only just a couple weeks before. So he needing money, but he quit his job. Did you know about this? What can you say about it?
Yeah, I knew that he quit the job because the pain was too much, and he just couldn't handle it at that time. Now, it was the pain of the arm, and this was he didn't chip his tooth till I think a couple of days later when he quit his job.
Okay.
So that was the bad thing, but he couldn't go back because the pain that he had was just unbearable for him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that he was looking for a job back in telemarketing or something like that, like on the phone.
Yeah. Something that didn't involve a lot of physical movement.
Exactly.
Yeah. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense as well. Okay. And I just want to go back to kind of wrap all of this up. So obviously between 2014 and the time of his disappearance in 2017, very difficult time. A lot of physical pain and then also some memory issues. Although it didn't seem the brain issues didn't seem to affect his everyday life. He'd still be able to create his music and he was going to work and everything. But he was still having memory issues and never could actually remember the day of him getting hit.
Well, he remembered one time in the hospital.
He did.
When I asked him what was the last thing that you see, and he said in front of me was the sign of the second exit, and that's exactly where the accident was. Okay. And then he said one time "Oh my God, I heard a crash behind me, and I was about to turn on, and all I saw was headlights." Mm-hmm. And then he said to me, and he almost fainted. I remember that because this was in the hospital. And I said, don't worry about it. I said, that's all I don't need to know. So we kind of left it at that because the trauma was so big for him that he actually remembered what happened. That I think even the doctor gave him some painkillers just to get him calm. So that's the only thing that he said about the accident. Okay. But yeah.
Now please continue, please.
After that, he told me about this crazy story that he wanted to go to Atlanta to be picked up. That was really it.
Okay.
And
I'm just going to ask you about that. That's where I want to wrap this section of this interview up. Do you think that you ever really did get the full story about him going to Atlanta and, and how he ended up getting hit? Did you to this day, do you think you have the full story regarding that? And what I mean by the full story is he said he was going to Georgia. He was going to get picked up by somebody else. Of course, TJ dropped him off. Somebody else was going to get him, pick him up. But just as an example of a question that might pop up because of that, well, who was it that was going to pick you up? And did this person ever call and say, hey, Rob/Francis never met me? Did anything like that ever come up in the aftermath of this accident?
No.
Okay.
Never.
Okay. And I guess what we're also saying is in the next 3.5 years, Rob never said to you, he never said something like, that wreck really messed things up because I was supposed to go up to Georgia and meet this guy and we were going to do an album together or anything. No talk like that?
No, he always had it about a girl. He said a girl's supposed to pick me up.
A girl was supposed to pick him up. But
yeah,
to this day, we don't know who that girl is. We don't know who that girl is.
No.
Okay.
For the thousands.
All right. These are just the questions that I have to ask Bella regarding it. Because the listeners know how I am. If somebody's going to say, well, I'm going somewhere, and then that person goes missing or something happens, and there's like really no context to it, well, who are you supposed to be meeting? How was this arranged? What time you were going? Then I start getting a little suspicious, and that's why I have to ask questions like this. So,
absolutely.
So I just want everybody to understand that here we're doing this interview once again on September 17th of 2024. There's still some outstanding questions regarding what exactly was going on with TJ dropping Rob off and Rob walking on the highway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, very good. So we've moved up to within a couple weeks. He has this chipped tooth. He fell somehow, accident with the woman in his life, chips his tooth. He's kind of self-conscious about that. He's quit his job because of the pain. Do you remember maybe just those few couple days before he went missing? Anything that stood out to you as being unusual? Of course, you're his roommate, although I understand you have two different schedules. Anything in those couple days before that maybe you look back now 10 years on and think, or 7 years on and think, there's just, maybe in retrospect, maybe I should have been a little more curious of that. Anything like that before the disappearance day?
No. And people if I would tell you the last couple of days what he did, people would tell me like, oh, it looks like he was saying goodbye to everybody. But no, because he would do almost when football season started, I think it just started again, he would go to his mom on Sunday because he knew I don't like football. So he would go there or with his homies and check out the football game and would cook. That's things that he would regularly do during the season of football.
Right.
He would go and play basketball on a Sunday because Francis and Amp and TJ most of the time would play basketball around that court. And this is where all the people would come down, from back in the days, and they would come and play ball with each other. They would do that on a Sunday. And this is all kind of, for me, regular things that he would do. So nothing in particular. Okay. He was a little bit more on the phone with TJ, a little bit more away from me. So I felt a little bit of a distance.
Okay.
In the last few weeks. But that could be that I'm living my life. He living his life. He got his girlfriend that he's trying to rekindle. He's talking a lot more on the phone with TJ. about this situation. And so, yeah, that's
Okay.
the only things that I'm like, okay, maybe I missed it, but.
Okay, right. You have to remember you have your own life to lead. Of course, you don't know he's going to go missing. You also have a son that you have to take care of, a special needs son on top of that. You have your own things to take care of. You have your own business. You know, you got your own issues to deal with in your own life. Important stuff.
Yeah.
Right, of course. Okay. And when you say he was talking to TJ about the situation, what situation are you talking about? The situation with his girlfriend or what?
Yeah, I overheard him a lot of times. He talks for hours with TJ about that, about football. It could be about football, it could be about basketball. It was all kinds of conversations that they had, just men talk, you know. And sometimes I jump in because it was always on speaker and I would hear it. And sometimes I was like, okay, that's male talk.
Okay. So I guess what we're also saying, it's not like he was trying to withhold anything from you. He was talking on speakerphone, so he doesn't seem to care whether you listen or not, or hear or not.
Not all the time, but I think that he would talk to TJ about the other things that he would do it in the room or when he knew I wasn't home. Because of course, I got my life, so I take care of my stuff.
Right. And we have to remember his disappearance date is September 25th of 2017. So this episode's coming out just a couple days after that occurred. And of course, football season, as we know right here in 2024, has just started a couple weeks into the season. So makes all the sense in the world that he and TJ are talking about, I guess, the Jacksonville Jaguars or whoever else. Let's move up to the disappearance, like what we might call the day of the disappearance. And, you're out. My understanding is you're out doing stuff. You come home, his car's there, and you think he's home, and then things transpire. Why don't we go through all of that now, Bella?
Okay, so I come home from work at about 7:45 in the morning because I worked overnight.
Okay.
And I left Francis the night before at 10:30, and I never lock the door. I actually don't do that because he's home. And I think I asked him, is you going somewhere? If you do, don't forget to lock the door. That was the conversation that I had with him. And he rented all these movies from the day of. On Monday morning, he went to the library and he rented all these DVDs. And I still had a DVD player, so I know that he just rented a bunch of them. Okay. I was like, okay, so you're going to run a marathon, huh? And that was kind of what the conversation was. And then I left to work and I came home. And I see his car standing on the exact same spot. He had a sweet little spot, a little bit off the entrance. And he would always park his mother's car there. And so I come back and it's still on this sweet little spot. And I come back in my apartment and his door is closed. So I'm thinking he's sleeping. Right. In his room. Of course. I'm not going to bother him. Right. So early. So I make my breakfast and everything. And then his mom called me up and says, hey, he didn't come up for the appointment at 10 o'clock for his car. I said, oh, that's weird. Because that means that he walked by me or left before because his car is still here this morning. So I went outside and I looked and I saw his car still parked. So I went back inside and that's when I looked in the room. And I was like, okay, so his car key is still here. His car is still here. I don't know. Maybe he forgot the appointment. Maybe he's with his girlfriend or with somebody else. Sure. So that was my first initial thought. It was nothing strange. And that's when she went in full panic because she felt like, hey, we already had this appointment for 4 weeks. The tires that he wanted to have on are actually in the car to put on the car. Huh. Okay. Yeah, so I was like, that's weird because that's what he wanted to be having on. And then I'm like looking, and I don't really see no clothes packed, nothing. And the only thing that was left out of my apartment was my key. And then I realized, I was like, oh, he actually locked my door. He double locked my door, the front door. I was like, yeah, when I came in, he locked the door double front. I was like, okay, so he literally left the door locked.
Okay.
Left my apartment, and nowhere was his phone to be found. Then before I knew it, the cops came about the report.
Wow.
So
Who called the cops? Who called the cops?
His mom.
His mom did. Okay.
Yes. So his mom had this whole feeling that something was wrong.
Okay.
And she called the cops and said that the last time she saw him was on the day before, the 24th. That's why on the poster it says the 24th.
Okay.
But I'm the last person who saw him on the 25th.
Okay. Gotcha.
So
what we're saying is he wasn't in his room. You come home, it looks like he's in his room. The door is shut, but the car is there, the tires are in there, and then you go in his room and he's not there.
No.
Wow.
And the key to the car is there.
Yeah.
So this is when the cops eventually came pretty fast, actually, to do the report. And I said, listen, there's something that you need to know about Francis. He does not leave without his wallet.
Mm-hmm.
I can't find his wallet. I said, but, and his book bag. He would never leave without those two things.
And where were those?
And
where were those?
Well, the cop actually said, did you already look in the car? And I was like, oh, no way, they're in the car, because Francis would go out in a storm to get his wallet out of the car.
Mm-hmm.
And then they took the keys, and they that's when it really hits me, actually, because the first thing that he says in the console when he opened up the car door, he said, oh, look, is this his wallet? And I'm like, oh my God, yes it is. I said, could you please open up the trunk? Because now I'm thinking this is really weird.
Of course.
He said, what are you looking for? I said, the black book bag.
Mm-hmm.
Or backpack. Okay. And he opened up the trunk and the backpack came. And that's when I actually literally got as white as a ghost. Mm-hmm. I had to sit down. The officer was like, are you okay? I was like, sir, you don't understand. This is serious. These are two items that he would never leave his house without it. And that's when the cop said, okay, the two detectives are coming to your house. Stay put.
All right,
Don't touch anything, stay put.
All right, so I'm sure, that, of course, we have very educated listeners here at Unfound, and they're already telling, man, all of this can tell. This all happened very fast. This wasn't like, all right, Rob's not in his room, we're going to give it a couple days. This is like almost immediate that his mother, you let it, he doesn't show up for this appointment. She feels something's not right, and already she's calling the cops, and they're over there fairly quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so
super quick.
So from the time, let's just say, from the time you get home that morning until the cops show up, what, maybe 3 hours? Something like that? That's it?
Tops.
Wow. Okay.
It didn't. Maybe I think my response to it, realizing, okay, this is wrong. And of course, we called everybody, and nobody knows where Rob is.
Of course.
And a couple of people, of course, don't pick up their phone because they're at work, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of people also say, like, oh, don't worry about it. This is Francis. He'll be all right. Mm-hmm. You'll find him. You know how he is.
What did the woman, whether she got talked to that day or a week later or whenever, what did the woman in his life, this woman he was trying to get back together with her, what did she have to say about this? What was her initial reaction? Do you remember? Do you know?
Yes, absolutely, because she cried the whole time. And she said, this is bad, this is wrong, and we're supposed to get married, and all these things. They had all these future plans. Same thing with his mom, of course, he had plans with.
Yeah.
That day. He had an appointment that day.
Yeah.
Then he had an appointment with Amp that he made Sunday night to go and cut hair at my house, because that's what Francis did too. He always cut everybody's hair.
Okay.
So he had all these appointments with people that, was like, hey, we just made this appointment, and it's not like he was gonna leave, but yeah, it was absolutely very fast.
Okay. I should ask, before you left for work, I guess the day before, was Rob at home?
Yes.
He was. And where was he? Was he in his room? Was he out on the couch? How was his demeanor? What can you say about that? What you remember last time you saw him? What do you remember about that moment?
It was, I believe that we had a discussion about one of those movies that he rented.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
we was absolutely talking smack about the movie.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Like we always did.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he wants his right, and I want to have my right. So that was a very funny conversation that I remember.
Yeah.
And he was gonna watch all these movies, and he was like, "Yo, I'll tell you the rest when you come home." Okay. Like, you forgot it. And I was like, no, I know for a fact, I think it was the end of the movie that we were having a discussion about.
Okay.
Now, that was all good.
All right, as best as you can tell, and we're going to get back into, some of the, we'll get back to the police in a moment. Could you tell, of course, we're open to different ideas about what happened to Rob. we don't tell the audience what to think here at Unfound. But could you determine from the movies, was one of the movies in the DVD player, did it look like he left the house or was abducted from the house or whatever anybody wants to believe? Was that ever to be determined somehow by the DVDs? Were any of them watched? Were any of them out of their packages? Anything like that?
I believe he actually watched them. He was watching them. That's a very good question, because I am not sure if he... that's a good question. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know. I just know that he locked the door behind him. And there was no second glass of drinks or what. No, it was his drinks and whatever he got out of the cabinet to eat.
Okay.
So...
Very good. And just in that initial time, and we're going to come back to this in a little bit, but what to this day, here in 2024, what is missing besides Rob? What of his possessions are missing besides Rob himself?
My house key.
Okay.
And the phone.
Okay. Now, something I do want to ask you, of course, like you just said, his phone and the key to your place are still missing 7 years later. But just to make sure we cover all the bases here, Bella, of course, you were living there with Rob, but your son also living with you. Where was he during this time? My impression is Rob was home by himself, and you were at work. Where was your son during this time?
Because I worked overnight, he was always sleeping overnight at his dad's house.
Oh, okay.
So I would pick him up in the morning, bring him to school from his dad, and then I pick him up from school, and he will be with me and Francis till 7:30, and then his dad would pick him up bring him back to bed, and that's how we would work it.
Okay, that is what you worked out. All right, custody. Yeah. All right, very good. Thank you for explaining that. Just to make sure we cover all the bases about who was there and who wasn't there during this 24-hour period. Okay, very good. Thank you. Let's get back to the police. So they show up very quickly. They're assessing the situation. You're telling them what's going on. His mother's telling them what's going on. Did they go and talk to the woman in Rob's life, Francis's life? Did they go and talk to TJ, any of these other friends? Do you know what the police did at that time?
Not pretty sure about it. Not completely till later on they told me the story. But they tried to get in contact with Empathy first. And then they were both at work, so they just said, okay, we got to go to their jobs and just talk with them for a little bit to see what they know.
Yeah.
Of course, they know the same story as me, so the last time they saw them was on Sunday during the basketball game, because they were all playing basketball there.
Okay.
So that was kind of it, and that they had an appointment on Tuesday. That's it. And then TJ was dodging them. And they finally found him at his place, and they said, "Can we come inside?" And he was like, "No, you can't." And they were telling TJ like, "Oh, we're not looking for drugs, whatever. We just want to sit down and talk with you." And he said, "No, you can sit down and talk with me outside." And then they had the conversation about how close they were. And he completely denied that they were on the phone as much as I said that they were. But they didn't know that from me yet. And he said, "Oh, no, he was a friend of mine, but we were not as close as Bella was. Bella knows everything."
I see.
And they kind of left it at that.
But just to be clear, though, you weren't there. This is what the police told you later. Of course, you were not sitting there when these conversations. This is what the police told you later.
Yeah, when I was like, "Hey, did you guys talk to TJ? Because TJ is very loyal. I remember that from the accident."
Right, of course.
I remember that.
Right.
TJ talked to him the most, actually, out of everybody on 2 weeks, 3 weeks before that on a daily basis. They were always talking. And that's when the detective was like, "Okay, so there's a 2 or 3 months later." Of course, the detectives can tell me nothing. They have to keep things to the back. And when they came and they gave me the stuff back or something like that from Francis, that's when I asked them. I said, "Hey, did you ever talk to TJ?" And they was like, "TJ is the friend that," yeah, it was kind of strange that he didn't want to let us go inside the house, but okay, maybe he's afraid, whatever.
Okay.
And then they told me that. And I was like, "What?" I was like, "He's lying to his teeth. Y'all got to go back."
Wow.
And she was like, "We kind of stopped the, that's you saying it versus him saying it." So I was like, wow. I was like, I know how loyal TJ is.
Right.
So that was my personal, and maybe he got nothing to do with it. I just know.
That's just your response to it.
Knows.
That's just your. You are certainly entitled to your feelings and your insights, and those are your feelings and insights on it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. This is my opinion.
Okay. Very good. What about just in case? I'm not saying anybody has to believe this, but I just have to ask. What about any searches of the area? Did they ever get together a group of people to go look around the area to see if any signs of Rob/Francis could be found? Maybe that key, maybe his phone. Did they get dogs out? Anything like that?
Oh, I wish. I begged them to do it. No. They looked around my apartment because there was a lot of bush in the back. So, for example, if you close my door and you could just throw it out, it will be in the bush behind me. Okay. So they did completely search that part. I know that with, I think, 3 or 4 cops.
Okay.
I remember that part because I was like, "Can I look too?" And they was like, "No, you gotta stand here just in case they find something." Of course. So yeah, they did search that area, and they came back a couple of times to look for video of a corner store, and they said, "Well, it goes on replay, so they don't save anything."
Yeah.
Of course, that's what our luck is. But other than that, no, they didn't do a full search to me.
Okay. Let's just, being that you brought a corner store like that up, let's just say, once again, not to go theorizing too much, how close is the nearest convenience store? If he were to walk somewhere, say he wanted to go down to get some potato chips and some drinks or something, how far would he have to go if he didn't feel like driving?
Out of my apartment across the street.
Oh, that close. Wow.
Yes.
Right across the street. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I guess even though they didn't have any video, no witnesses at that convenience store saying, yeah, we saw Rob in here, anything like that.
Well, the thing is that the cop explained it to me. To order, because this is a grown man.
Yep.
To be missing without any trace, they need to have some type of violent crime or a burglary, something.
Yep.
That they can ask for the orders to do that. So.
Okay.
It looks like he went out of the door without any without anything.
Right.
Really.
And of course, he didn't have his wallet with him, so if he was going to pay for anything, wouldn't have had his credit card or anything like that.
Nothing.
Okay. Let's move on now to, in the outline I'm calling the rest of the case, we're going to get into some of the topics that we've already discussed a little deeper, and we are going to start with Rob's room. Of course, the car keys were left inside, I guess, except that your apartment key is still missing. I have to ask, the apartment key and the car keys not on the same key ring? He kept those separate?
Yeah, he kept everything separate.
Okay.
Unfortunately. He's very particular with that, so he would keep every key and stuff separate. So.
Okay. I have to ask because I live in a condo where I lock the door and my car keys and my condo door key are all on the same ring. So that's why I just have to ask. In retrospect, maybe not that day. Of course, the police show up. His mother's worried. They ask around. They're talking to people. But you're the one who's living there. After a couple days of just sitting there, of course, you're worried about him, maybe thinking that Rob's going to walk back through the front door in minutes. But was there anything maybe after the fact, maybe looking in his room or anything, that at first glance you didn't catch, but in retrospect, a couple days down the road, you looked at it and said, well, that's unusual. Anything like that caught your attention along those lines?
No. Honestly, no.
Wow.
I mean, he didn't pack no clothes. He bought a lottery ticket on Monday for the next Tuesday. So for the next day, no, there's nothing in there that says he's about to leave. Okay. That was always my thing. There's nothing there.
Okay. And of course, no signs of violence. Of course, the front door was locked, but no signs of violence, like anything knocked over, anything broken, nothing like that.
Nothing.
Okay. Let's move on to his car. Of course, I guess it was parked in this very same spot where it was when you left for work before, correct? Same spot.
Yeah.
Same spot. And you stated that his wallet with his ID and anything else were they sitting on the seat? Were they in the glove compartment? Were they in the glove?
Oh, in the middle console.
In the middle console. And being that you lived with Rob, where did he usually keep his wallet? Did he always keep it in the car? Like, I know sometimes my dad does that, but is that what he used to do? What do you know about that?
No, he would never leave without his wallet. Okay. He would never leave without his ID.
Right. But when he would come home from somewhere, would he take his wallet inside or would he leave it out in the car?
He would take his wallet inside, 100%.
Okay.
Right there next to his car key. And now that I'm talking to you and I'm revisiting the day.
Yeah, please.
I just thought about something, right?
Go ahead.
There was something else. That was something else in that car, and this might have to do with his short-term memory, because he left food in the car.
He did. Huh.
He did. In the trunk.
In the trunk. Food was in the trunk.
Yeah. Next to his backpack.
So when we talk about food, are we talking?
There's 4 big tires.
All right. What kind of car was this, by the way?
This is Impala.
Bigger car. Bigger
Chevy
car.
Impala.
Bigger car. All right. So
Yeah.
when you say food was in, we have to clarify. There, of course, we different types of food. Are we talking about food like as if you went through the drive-through and left like the bag in the trunk, or are we talking like going to an actual grocery store and buying things and putting them in the trunk? What kind of food are we talking about?
It was leftover food from his mom's house that he was at on Sunday night.
Wow.
And of course he left it in the trunk because he had a big tire next to him on the passenger seat and 3 tires in the back seats. Because they needed they're supposed to be exchanged, so there was no place for him to put the food in.
No room.
So he left it in the trunk.
Wow. That makes sense. I mean, there wouldn't be any room. 4 tires in the compartment, in the passenger compartment. Yeah, there wouldn't be any room left.
Exactly.
Wow.
Just remember that he took his car downtown to go to the library on Monday.
Yes.
Because we got the receipt for the videotape for the DVDs that he bought, that he lent. So my thought has always been like, oh, you know what? He forgot because of his memory was scrambled up, his short lost memory too.
Could be.
He might have forgot those 2 things out of his car.
Could be. But then we also have to believe he forgot his wallet too.
Exactly.
And a bunch of things that you think, at least the way I understand it, things that he would bring inside actually got left in the car.
Yeah.
Okay. Regarding the backpack, are you believing that the backpack was in the trunk also because the tires were taking up all the room?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know what was in the backpack? Was that taken for evidence or did they leave it there? Did you ever have a chance to look inside it?
We looked inside it. There was nothing in there of value.
Okay.
He always had his music with him, his CDs, just in case he would pop up to somebody. And I believe he had some clothes in there, like when he was doing basketball. I believe he had something like that in there.
Okay. All right, so you have the car sitting out there in the same spot, tires that were supposed to get put on the car, but Rob goes missing first. Let's move on to this. His phone is still missing 7 years later, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Did they try to ping the phone? Was anybody able to get any records? And was anybody able to determine who the last person was that Rob texted or called or talked to on his phone before he went missing?
Okay, so his phone was turned off, and I believe that he knew it was about to be turned off, or I don't exactly remember if it was already turned off. But I knew that he was going to pay it because he needed to pay. He had a phone service that you need to pay monthly, and so he needs to pay $30. And he said to me, "Oh, I'm due tomorrow to put my phone back on." I said, "Because now nobody can call you for if you have a job or whatever, just put your phone back on." They did it later. Only the phone company, I think they made a mistake, but they couldn't ping it anymore.
Okay. Yeah, and what kind of, was this like what you call like a track phone, a pay-as-you-go phone, or what was it?
Yeah.
It was. All right, so it was not like what we'd say like AT&T or T-Mobile, something like that.
No.
Okay. Yeah, and we've learned the hard way here at Unfound how those records are tough to get. And
we couldn't get any records. Yes. Even his mom tried, and we couldn't get nothing. And then I know that the cops actually tried to find it. And I know that he got a call around 6 a.m., 5 or 6 a.m., I think it was.
Wow.
But they couldn't trace the call. He picked it up, and I know it ended for like 10 or 15 seconds. It was a very short conversation.
No idea who that person is.
No, because there is no violence, so they can't trace that phone call.
Right.
unfortunately.
All right, so that's maybe something. I'm guessing in the last 7 years, nobody's owned up to that call. TJ, the girlfriend, his mother, any of these other people that you've mentioned during this interview, nobody's owned up to that.
No. Unfortunately not.
Okay.
See, because I could tell with the last time I talked to him, and that was when I went downstairs and I called him up, and now that I think about it, it's probably about one of the DVDs, and I said, yo, I know for sure, that's the ending, whatever, just to close the conversation.
Yeah.
And then I probably said to him, like, hey, if you leave, lock the door, okay? And then he said back 10-4.
Okay.
And that's always his his answer for you.
The 10-4. All right, like a trucker.
Is it good?
Okay. All right. All right, so we still do have this, seemingly, if we're to believe the police, this one call that was made at 6 a.m., I guess not long before you got home that morning.
Exactly.
Okay, not sure what to think of that. I guess what we're saying also within all of this, no matter what we want to believe, whether he left on his own or somebody took him or whatever else, there's no real solid proof on when that moment would have been. It could have been 1 a.m, it could have been 3 a.m, it could have been 5 a.m. Really have no specific idea when Rob left the apartment.
They only know is that for him to be able to receive that call, he would have been on my network, on my Wi-Fi.
Okay. All right, so that's at 6 a.m.
So, yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Let's move on to this. Now, you said your apartment key is still missing. I have to ask, did you eventually get like the locks changed in case the key got into the wrong hands, or did the owner of the apartment complex get it changed? Did you have that done?
No.
Okay. But the apartment key, to your knowledge, is still missing. Nobody's ever turned it in.
Exactly.
No. Somebody found it out on the street somewhere. All right.
No.
Let's move on to this. Please go ahead.
That was also one of the reasons why I didn't change my locks. Of course, I didn't tell anybody. I told everybody I changed my lock, but I never did. And the reason was because I always thought, like, let's just say he wants to come home, come back. At least he's able to open up the door. That was always my thought process. And then I changed the code on my alarm system, of course, because he knew everything. So that's what I did do. So if somebody would come in, I would at least get a call from, hey, somebody tried to break in your house.
Okay. Good idea. Let's move on to this. Now, there is something that you showed to me. Was it a text? Was it a phone call? Something regarding a job. Why don't you talk about that? What is this whole thing about? Once again, right here in 2017, it kind of almost sounds like the same thing that was going on in 2014, where he was going to Atlanta for some job. Well, now he was saying that he got a call, he got an email about some kind of job that he was interested in. What can you say about that? When did that happen?
That happened in let me see, that was the night of the disappearance. So the morning of the disappearance.
Okay.
So at 3:05 a.m. He sent out a tweet.
Huh.
And in the tweet it says, now I have to look it up.
Take your time.
Sorry.
That's all right. Take your time.
And so he sent out a tweet, and the first tweet says, I got that email for the job out of states that I've been looking for. Yeah, in my Jeezy voice, LOL. And right after that, in the same minute, he said, nice stomping ground for music too. So these are the two. They were sent on the 26th of September on 3:08 a.m.
Wow.
Yes. So a couple of hints are that I knew that he was trying to get out of Jacksonville. He was tired of it and he wants to change his life and et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
He have done that before. The only difference is he went to Atlanta, stayed there with a female just to get his music up and popping there. And he found out that wasn't the right move for him. But this is the different. He told his mom, his grandma, me, TJ, and Bethel. We all knew where he was at.
Right.
So he never left us out. He just kept contact with us, and it was all good. And when he wanted to come back to Jacksonville at the time, he actually asked me if I could get the bus ticket for him and pick him up at the bus station. And that's what I did. Got him the bus ticket to come back to Jacksonville, picked him up, and then I believe he stayed with his mom for a while.
But regarding whatever he tweeted at 3 a.m. on September 26th of 2017, you have no idea what he was talking about.
Absolutely none. And
Wow.
then the cops actually checked his laptop for the emails that he's talking about. They didn't find anything, and they go deeper into the whole deleted messages and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They didn't find anything. So yeah, that's two of the messages that is really, really crazy to me.
And just so we can put this in the timeline, these tweets were sent out just hours before he went missing.
Exactly.
And it also means he was up at like 3 a.m.
And it also means that he was probably, I think, in my apartment.
Right. All right, so I guess what we're also saying in the last 7 years, nothing's ever popped up factually that anybody's come forward and said, I was going to give Rob a job somewhere and then he went missing. Nothing like that's ever come up.
None.
Okay. How often
I asked my friends.
Please.
Oh, sorry.
Go. No, please, Bella. Please continue, please.
And I actually reached out to the people, his friends in Atlanta that I know too, that if we would go to Atlanta, those were the people that we were actually in contact with. I actually asked them to, like, hey, could you please just give his mom a hint if he's still alive? And they all like shooting like, what? No, we didn't even know. No. So yeah, I actually reached out to other people to see if there's a job, and nothing.
Nothing at all.
No.
Okay, doing that. Of course, now in 2024, it's called X, but back then it was called Twitter. How often would Rob send out messages on that service?
He was actually getting a little bit more active.
He was. Okay.
Because I set up his Facebook. He was not really into the Facebook whole thing. I set up the X and I set up Instagram too. He started getting a little bit into it because I told him that's the way to get your music out too.
Right.
So you need to get a little bit more of a following and having people to check it out.
Right.
So he started using it more as a marketing tool.
Yes.
And then he started, I think it goes back before he started living with me. So that was May. I think he will go back to April or March. He started to following people in the music industry and start tweeting mostly about football.
Okay.
And sometimes about the heartbreak that he had with his girlfriend.
All right.
Or the falling out. Let me say it like that.
Okay. And then his final tweets were about this job that was allegedly coming up for him.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was these tweets, once again, to remind everybody, tweets were done just hours before he goes missing, just hours before you got home that morning.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Now, of course, you lived in an apartment complex. Did any neighbors come forward to say, I heard something, I saw something, something unusual went on that night? Neighbors helpful at all?
No, because they asked actually the neighbors. Because we were all friendly with the neighbors, and most of the neighbors actually knew Francis also. So yeah, no.
Okay. So neighbors, no help. Let's move on to this. How about the apartment complex not have any video cameras?
They had afterwards.
They had them after.
But not.
All right, after the horse is already out of the
because
barn.
there was complaints about it, and that's when the lighting was really bad too. They had like 2 lights, and it was terrible. And we've all been complaining, and then when the detectives came, and at night one day, I said, well, why don't you come at night so you can see it, so you can have a better vision of it. And then they eventually went straight to the apartment complex people there, and 3 days later there was suddenly lights up and cameras up.
But already after Rob is already missing, like I said,
exactly.
Closing the barn doors after the horse has already escaped.
Hey.
Okay. Okay. After his disappearance, was there anything that popped up that could have given him a reason, that you found out could have given him a reason to leave? For example, beefs with anybody. Of course, we know in the music business those things happen. Any troubles with the law, any warrants, anything like that ever popped up after he went missing?
No, absolutely not. That was probably the craziest part about it. We wish that somebody would come forward to say like, oh yeah, that had beef or something. There's no lead at all. None.
Okay. We talked about TJ. You said that he didn't want to say too much. He wouldn't let the police inside of his place over the last 7 years. To your knowledge, of course, we understand you've now moved back to Europe, but has TJ ever offered up an opinion on what happened to his friend Rob? Anything like that?
TJ mainly took care of not being in my surroundings. He came one time 3 weeks after he was missing. He called me up.
Okay.
That's the only thing that he did, and he said to me, "Hey, Rob wants you to move on." And I said, "What do you mean with that? It sounds like you're telling me he's dead. You know something.
Right.
He's missing, not dead."
Right.
And he said, "Well, you know what Rob always said, if I die, move on. Enjoy your life. I lived mine correctly." And I said, "I know that he said that before, but this is not the moment to. You're supposed to be looking for him and not telling me
right
this piece of information that I know already what he said." And I asked him, "Did you know anything?" And he said, "No, of course not." And then he said, "Have a good day, Bells," and he hanged up the phone. And I found later out that he called one other friend telling the same message. That's the only strange thing I think about.
Okay. And we have to remember, TJ's also the guy that randomly dropped off, even though it seems like Rob requested him to do this, but TJ was the one that randomly dropped Rob off on the side of the highway at the Florida-Georgia border.
And didn't tell anybody.
Right.
Was loyal enough to not say a word while he was in the hospital.
Right. And TJ to this day has never explained to you or even to Rob's family why he did that either.
Nope.
Yeah, you think? I guess what we're saying. Please, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please, Bella. Please.
I spoke always with Amp. Amp is a in between me and TJ type of guy, and he is very good with TJ. And he knows my opinion about TJ. And he said, "Yo, I kept asking him. He really don't know anything, Bells. You keep seeing it wrong." And I was like, "No." Okay. But then again, Amp is a very believable, naive. I think he's naive
Okay.
towards him,
Okay.
and I'm not. So.
All right.
But I've never spoke with TJ again after he went missing.
That one call, that was it.
Yeah.
Do you know if Rob's family keeps in contact with TJ?
Well, this is the funny part. TJ, we call him TJ, but I found out that that's not his original name. And when I told his mom, she said, I don't know no TJ, I don't know it. And then I said his real name, and then she said, oh, no way. But we haven't talked to him in years. And I was like, there you go. Kept him away from everybody.
I see.
So, yeah.
Huh. Any insight why Rob would do that at all? Any insight? And we don't have to know TJ's real name. Any insight why Rob/Francis would do something like that?
Because he is probably the only one who Francis know that I would tell his mom if I know something. Because I'm a mother. I have a son.
Yeah.
Something would happen. I would never be able to live with myself knowing something like that. So yeah, I think TJ is, I mean, I think he is kind of like the most loyal person to Francis, and he kept the secret very well. I don't think the woman in his life could do that either. I know for a fact she couldn't.
Yeah, did you talk to the woman in Rob's life after all this happened? And if you can say,
Yeah,
what were some of those conversations?
Yeah. Well, she don't understand either that nobody's looking for him the way I was doing, and she was doing too. And they had so much plans for the future, so that's one thing that that we definitely believed. But yes, he always kept up with me. Absolutely.
Okay. Did she have any interactions with TJ after Rob went missing?
No.
0. Okay.
She did not get that call from TJ because TJ don't have her number.
Okay. Let's move on to you. How long did it kind of creep you out to continue to live in that apartment, knowing what happened? I mean, how long? Of course, you're back in Europe. We're not asking about your personal life, but staying in that apartment after Rob went missing from it, creep you out, or what?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, for the longest, I would just sit and smoke on the stairs, and then every time when I would hear somebody walking on the stairs, I would think that it's Francis and stuff like that. No, I have never been afraid that something would happen to me. Of course, later on, yeah, but I would hope that, I don't know, I wasn't really afraid of it.
Okay. How long did you continue to live in that apartment before you moved out?
2 years.
All right. Okay.
And then I moved out for a little bit, and then I moved back to Europe.
Okay. Did you, after the fact, of course, we already said the neighbors didn't see or seemingly see or hear anything. When you would run into your neighbors, would Rob's name come up over those next 2 years? Ever come up?
No, I don't think so. I think in the beginning, yes. But later on, no. It seems like it's fading away.
Yeah.
And that's terrible, because that's always what it felt like, and it faded away very quickly for my feeling.
Yeah, the world keeps spinning.
Yeah, and also that I think a lot of people knew that me and him were so close, so I always felt that people looked at me like, oh, you know something, but you're so
Right.
loyal, you don't tell.
Right. Okay. What would you say that area, that kind of area where you were living, safe, dangerous, somewhere in between? What kind of area was that of Jacksonville?
Um, it's not the best neighborhood. It's not the
Okay.
worst, but it's not the best. We was living
Okay.
on the north side.
Okay.
I felt pretty safe, but it really depends on the where you're coming from, I guess.
Right. Yeah, right. And whether you're watching out for yourself and not doing stupid stuff, as we say,
Exactly.
keeping your
So
head on a swivel, make sure nobody's creeping up behind you. Be aware of your surroundings.
exactly.
Okay. What about all of Rob's stuff? Who ended up, of course, you're living together, all his stuff's there, including those DVDs and everything else. Who got all of his stuff?
So his mom, his family, they came and picked up all his clothes and his stuff, and they put it in storage. They already had stuff for him in storage. So with me, it was just pure clothes and a couple of CDs that he still had, of course. So it wasn't a lot at my place, basically, because it was only a small room, and I don't think that he was really planning on staying too long with me.
Okay.
I think that he was planning on going back to his girlfriend in the near future, honestly.
Okay. Do you how often do you keep in touch with Francis's family these days?
Not much anymore.
Not much. Okay. You're still on good terms. That's not to say you're on bad terms with him. You're still on good terms. It's just you're all just living your own lives now.
Exactly, and yeah, that's what it is. And I think that there's always been a question mark for me towards me. Did I say it correctly? Towards me. Like I think that's how I feel it. Let me say it correctly. It might not be true.
Right.
But we never spoke it out on that note that there is something that I've been missing, or there is something that I know and I don't want to tell. Right. And it's hard for other people to get that feeling away. And then of course you move away to Europe suddenly.
Yeah.
That's how they see it.
Right.
That's not how I see it. There's personal reasons. It's different. And this is my home here in Europe. So, but yeah, at that time, I think that they might have also see that like, oh, look at her, suspicious. Everything you do is suspicious. And I think I was very sensitive towards that also from their family. From his family, I'm sorry.
Okay. Let's talk about the podcast you did back in, I think it was 2020. What motivated you to finally do that? And I've listened to every episode. What was it finally? It was like, I think I'm going to do this.
There was definitely reason number one. I was looking for Francis for almost 3 years at that point. I fell into a heavy depression during the time when he left, and the search mode that I was in. I just couldn't get it right anymore. And with that came therapy. With that came the move back to Europe, which cost a lot of energy and it's really difficult to start back over again with a son with special needs in another country.
Yeah.
And my therapist said, how can you get your word out? And I was like, well, I kind of want to do a podcast. So at least I have on tape that if this guy comes back 10 years from now, that I would definitely gonna let him hear it, and that he can hear my grief. And also, if he's not coming back and he's somewhere in heaven, he looks down on me and be like, look at her. She at least put it on tape. And I didn't put it out to let anybody really hear it. I put it out for anybody to see, hey, look, she's still looking. Maybe somebody feels my grief and my fear and my hope, that they would say, like, okay, just drop an anonymous note to her saying, like, hey, listen, this is what happened, or search here for once. Something. Mm-hmm. So that was really the reasons why I did it. It was a little bit of self-therapy and a little bit of hope for somebody to listen to it, and a little bit of telling my story.
Now, I do have to ask, and of course I would urge people to go check it out, but everybody should also be let know that you didn't, I guess what we would say, you didn't quite finish the podcast. Maybe this is a good opportunity for you to explain. Maybe there are 4 or 5 episodes, and it sounded like you were planning for maybe 6, 7, 8, 9 episodes, but there were only like 4 or 5. Why was that? I'll just give you a chance to answer that question right now.
Well, first of all, this was me doing a podcast on my non-experienced way.
Yes.
I had 0 experience in podcasts, and it was never a dream to be a podcaster.
Gotcha.
Let's get that first out.
Mine neither. Me neither, Bella, if it makes you any... of course, when I was growing up, podcasting didn't even exist. So, but here we are, 8 years later, so I know the feeling, yes.
Yeah, so I just wanted to get my story out, basically. And so I made the first 4, and the 5th, my system, how I did it, didn't work out. The audio didn't work out. So that one is kind of scrambled. And I think that in my head, I always had the glance of hope, because somebody's missing, you always have a glance of hope that you will actually see the person again, or it's always that 0.1%. And I think at the time I made the podcast, that 0.01% got the best of me. And I didn't know where anymore to talk about. What more can I say?
Right.
So I kind of went in another direction in my life, personally, work out my traumas first, and did a whole lot of stuff. And afterwards, I was like, okay, nobody's listening anyways. Even though, to be honest with you, indeed, I have 6, even more written out. I have interviews with and Phil. I have and I just didn't know how to do it with the audio and everything. And then I was like, nothing came out of the first 4 or 5. How much more effort should I put into this? What do I give the listeners? And as you know, they're very short. And it's just pure because I don't know how to make them longer or drag out the story the way I'm supposed to probably do it. But I would urge people to actually do take a listen, so you will hear a little bit more about the story.
Well, you should know something, Bella, that I've already kind of put out to some of Unfound's most dedicated listeners. I've, said, in the upcoming weeks, we're going to be covering Rob's disappearance. And I'll have you know that some of those people already knew about your podcast. So There are people out there who do know about it and have already listened to it. So it wasn't like nobody was listening. There certainly were people listening. Certainly.
Maybe that was the way that I put down my first podcast. Like, okay, nobody's going to listen to this, but I got it out.
Yeah, you never know who you're going to reach.
What it was.
You never know who you're going to reach. But I will put it out just here right publicly as we're doing this interview on September 17th. If you'd like to finish those episodes, I'd certainly love to help you do that, given that I've made like almost 500 episodes now. Might be able to, give you some pointers and some things so you can at least complete it. If you do have additional information, of course, we talked about, I think most, if not all, the information today, but to have your own thing, your own specific Rob McLaughlin podcast, I think I could help you, to finish it if you'd like.
Just to finish it off.
Yes. Yeah, to just accomplish it. Absolutely. Instead of it just
That's
being
so
something
nice.
dangling out there, it's like we're in the music business. It's like starting a music album and then never finishing it. You get to like song 4 or 5, and it's like, well, I really don't know where to go creatively now, and I think I could help you at least put it in a semblance, and get the other 3 or 4 or 5 episodes done, and you could say, look at me, I did 10 podcast episodes, and it's all done, and I finished it.
Exactly, especially because I do have the interviews with Amphifield that I think I just listened to them actually not so long ago, and I think that they actually give a little bit of more context to it.
Well, I'm throwing it out there. I work for free, so if there's something you'd like to do with that, you let me know. Okay?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You let me know. Of course, I've listened to every episode, and that's why I had to ask you, because in some of the third or second or third episode, you say, well, we're gonna get into this, and then we get to 4 or 5, and it was over. It's like, what happened? And now, if we could finish it, nobody will be like that. It'll be like, wow, she really finished this, and man, this was really good. So there's that. But on that topic, how has this affected you? Knowing Rob the way you do, being around him for 8 years, of course, coming from another country to the United States, becoming very close with him, living with him, and then him going missing. How has this affected your life?
Oh, greatly. In the beginning, like I said, it consumed me completely, his disappearing. And even though I was working, taking care of my son and everything, I was getting more lonelier because I would start shutting people out. I didn't feel comfortable going to places where they know me and Francis would always go together, and they would look at me. A lot of people didn't have the nerves to actually talk about him while I was there, or they didn't want to rack it up. I couldn't say his name for the longest. So it affected me in the beginning heavily. And then later on, I went back to Europe when it actually got too much for me. I moved back to Europe, and then I found out that nobody knows Rob here.
Yep.
So that affected me a little bit differently, because now I could talk about Rob, how he was my best friend, and people would be like, oh, yeah, I believe you. Oh, he's gone. Oh, too bad for you. There's this kind of, you can lock it up. Okay, that's her problem. That's her thing. I don't know this person. And that gave me time to heal.
Yeah.
So it took a while for me to heal from that. But eventually, even though I took a couple of big steps after he is gone, I'm very happy, and my son is very happy here in Europe right now.
Great.
And I still come to Jacksonville, by the way.
Okay, great. Fantastic. All right, so you come back to the United States once in a while, making that long flight from Europe across the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, all right.
Different for you, but...
Okay. I mean, let me ask you this. You go back to Europe, and you have friends there, and you tell them, I was over there, and the worst, strangest thing happened to me. My roommate that I really got to know well went missing, and he's still missing 7 years later. How do your European friends react to that?
See, the violence here is different, and it doesn't happen very often here.
Yeah.
Somebody will go missing. Of course,
Right.
we're a very tiny little small country.
Mm-hmm.
But they have zero understanding of how it is to be living in gun violent or violence in itself.
Yes.
I don't know if that makes any sense right now to your listeners, but even though you don't want to, there is always somebody who knows somebody who got shot and killed.
Yeah.
And here, all my friends are still alive, having their lives. Nobody ever even have anything close to something like that happen to them.
Yeah.
So Yeah, you can watch on TV all these type of shows, but they're nothing comparing to real life.
Yeah.
So
It's the wild.
they
It's
see
like
that something as a
yeah. It's like what we call here in the United States. It's like the wild, wild west here in the United States compared to Belgium, the Netherlands, France, etc.
exactly. So
Yes.
they'd be like, yeah, really? So okay. So did they find them? No. Oh, and it's like, well, we don't understand what you what the problem is. Like almost like that. Like they'd be like, so nobody searched for him? Okay. You know, they very oblivious to what it does to you.
Yeah.
And I think, by the way, this goes for everybody. If you lose somebody and you can um, bury them, then you can close that book.
Yeah.
But if you can't find nobody and somebody's one missing, then you're like, wait a second, I still have hope, because that never goes away. And that's the most draining part
It is
of
draining. Yes.
Yeah.
Draining is
And
a good word.
really, yeah, it really drained me out. So yeah.
But you have found the
Everybody
energy.
loves it.
Yeah, but you have found the energy to start a Facebook page and maybe some other social media items. Why don't you mention any of those items right now?
So all the social media is hashtag, I think, find Rob Francis. That's the podcast also.
Okay.
And
Yes.
that's on Instagram and on Facebook.
Okay. Find Rob Francis. Of course, Francis is a name. Of course, his middle name, I guess, is Torrance. Where did he get the name? I should have asked you this early on. Where did he get the name Francis from?
Okay, so he used to call franchise.
Oh,
And
I
then
see.
you got a while back, you got the Franchise Boys.
Okay.
They had this song, they had this hit in the hip hop, and he was like, "Oh, this is not good," and then he changed it into Francis.
I see.
And then he made actually Royal Francis out of later on.
Right. Okay. So it started as franchise and then
Yeah.
changed to Francis because that's like a close word in the English language. And then he ended up calling it Royal Francis.
Yeah.
And to sound like a king or something.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha. All right, now I
'Cause
should have
he
probably
was from
gone through that at the
We're from
beginning.
royal blood.
Okay, yes, all right. Now I should have probably. Well, everybody's probably. Why is she calling him Francis when his name's? That's not even his middle name. What is she doing? And it came from a nickname that he gave himself for his music.
Exactly.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. Should have gone through that at the beginning. Any final words before we complete this interview, Bella?
No, I wanna. Well, yeah. I want to thank you for taking your time to do this interview with me, and of course, I hope that anybody, would have some information for me, a tip or something that they that makes it, or to find him. Let me say it like that. Yeah.
Okay. Bella, it's been great talking to you. You might imagine I don't have too many guests who are outside the United States. We do Canada. We've gone to New Zealand as well. But this is maybe our first person who's on the mainland of Europe.
European
So
ground.
yeah, so we're breaking new ground here at Unfound. I think that's the case. I'll have to maybe check that. Of course, we have 450 episodes or something now, but I'm thinking so. It was great talking to you today, and I appreciate you being on this episode of Unfound.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I hope the listeners are enjoying it and at least having their, of course, their divided opinions, but they're always welcome.
Yes. And you're welcome.
And that was my September 17th, 2024 interview with Bella, Rob McLaughlin's roommate. I thank her for joining me and all of you all the way from Europe on this episode. I think that's a first for Unfound. As was mentioned, Bella did her own podcast about Rob's case back in 2020. You can find it on Spotify. Just do a search for Robert McLaughlin. Although I did not mention this during the interview with Bella, I have created a map analysis video for Rob's disappearance. You can now find it on Unfound's YouTube channel. I start this summation by recognizing that chronic pain is a major cause of suicides. I'm not thinking it's cause number 1, but I could believe pain is in the top 5. But if we combine mental and physical pain, then I could surely believe they're close to the number 1 reason people take their own lives. Of course, recognizing that physical pain can lead to mental pain. And this could be what happened to Robert. Too much pain, he didn't see any end in sight. Rob did not want to become addicted to pain medication, surely admirable, and he tried to stick it out with sheer will alone. But it didn't work. Thus, Rob left that night and harmed himself. Yep, it could have happened. It doesn't take a missing persons expert like myself to have that idea. Yet, there are many gremlins in that theory. The big one, the still vague details of the accident in 2014, with both TJ and Rob not wanting to tell the whole story. Second, yes, Rob hurt himself again, just a few weeks before his disappearance. However, on September 23rd, the day before he was last seen, Rob played basketball with friends. That doesn't sound like a guy who had incapacitating pain. Third and last, I'm not sure a suicide theory explains the wallet in the car and the food in the car's trunk. Likewise, Rob seemingly took the house key wherever he went. Does this not mean he planned on coming back? But yes, I will admit that tweet Rob made about a new job is weird, if he actually wrote it. But these are the situations we get into analyzing disappearances. And we have to deal with it. If you'd like to hear and or read all of my in-depth analysis into the disappearance of Robert McLaughlin, please go to patreon.com/Unfound Podcast, sign up, and partake in the Unfound blog. Until then, I leave the public theorizing up to you. And that's the program. Right now, while you are in your podcast platform, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, wherever, give Unfound a 5-star review, a thumbs up, whatever that platform allows. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've just finished this episode of Unfound.